Hello everyone. Just like to give a very warm welcome to Mark Ward today. We're going to be talking to Mark about his life as a TD, the fact that Mark is his party spokesperson for mental health, and the fact that Mark lives with multiple sclerosis. Okay, Mark, thank you a million for coming on. I'm a little bit nervous actually interviewing you, but it's lovely, and thanks for your time. It's really good of you. I know you're very busy. Mark, for people that wouldn't know you and that will be listening, I just wonder, could you give a little bit of the personal side to Mark Ward, maybe just a little bit of your personal story?
Okay, thanks, Rob, and thanks for asking me to come on as well. And don't worry, I'm a little bit nervous too, so we'll be nervous together, and I'm sure we'll get through it. Like my backstory is, I come from a part of Dublin called North, which is just on the Midwest part of Dublin. Now, it's probably one of the most disadvantaged areas in the country, especially in Dublin. When I grew up, so the area that I grew up in, when we moved up there first, there wasn't even a bus route. There wasn't shops. There wasn't schools. There was no infrastructure. There was just a load of houses, social houses, just put into one area without the proper amenities in them. So from a very young age, I was seeing people from my area, for everything that they had to get out of life, they had to go out and fight for. So whether that was to go out and fight for the school that I ended up in St. Kevin's, or whether that was to fight for proper amenities as church, childcare, or anything else, I was seeing people kind of getting out on the streets and fighting for them because they had no choice. I seen the community spirit that came out of that, which kind of enamored me to that kind of lifestyle as well. And I very soon, as a young age, I was one of them people that was out advocating for better amenities in around my area. I'm very passionate about areas like mine and other areas that are similar across Dublin and across the country, because we get an awful lot of unfair kind of stick by the media and by government and officials that when they talk about social housing, they automatically think about antisocial, which is quite the opposite from the community that I grew up in. There was problems. There was drug use. There was antisocial behaviour. There was violence. There was crime. But you can't expect to put a load of people in the one area at the same time with a lot of kind of issues as what they came in with no amenities and no support service around them, and expect everything just to be rose in the garden. So a lot of the stuff that would have happened in Clondalkin and other parts of Dublin in particular around that time was the direct result of government policy. So as a young man, you don't know that, but as I've grown older, not all the same wiser, but as I've grown older, you start to look back on decisions that people make, policy decisions that people make that have a direct influence and a direct impact on the area that you grew up. Just family-wise, my father was in the Irish Army. He spent 25 years in the Irish Army. He was also a very quiet-spoken Republican man in the army, which was at the time you couldn't be a Sinn Féin supporter in the Irish Army because we were deemed a subversive organisation back then by the powers that be. So I'd see my father, who was a very honest, kind man, hard-working man, being punished in the army because of his political affiliation with Sinn Féin and republicanism. And that to me was another reason why I leaned towards Sinn Féin, because I see my father, who was a hard, honest working man, who has never been in trouble in his life for anything, getting into trouble just because he had a different political opinion than the organisation that he was involved in. And that kind of led me into that kind of lifestyle as well, Rob. So my mother was a she was a matriarch. She looked after the family home, but at the age of, I think I was about 16, my mother went back to work. She was the first kind of person around my area as a mother that went back to work, because mothers didn't work when we were growing up. That's just the way we thought. And that was kind of opened my eyes to, hold on, mother's place is not necessarily in the home, that she can go out and make a career for herself, and she can go out and work. And that kind of opened up my eyes to other things that would have happened around the area, to say, listen, there is chances for women to get out there and work, and they don't necessarily have to stay at home and be the matriarch of the family as well. So, and just the rest of them, all my brothers and sisters are all walking away. They're all in different career paths, and they're all productive members of society. And we're all very, very proud of that. And in the area, and 99% of the people from the area I come up with are the exact same.
That's fabulous, Mark. Thanks very much. And it gives people a really kind of nice view of actually who you are and where you're coming from. Mark, I suppose, look, we might tap into some of that there in a while, actually, but just obviously strange times at the moment, strange times all of this year, really, with COVID. And I'm just wondering for you yourself, like, how has it affected your kind of personal life of recent, just everything that has come with COVID, I suppose, recently?
It's been a challenge for everybody. No, not just for myself, but absolutely everybody. This has been one of the most challenging times that we've had. We'll probably look back at this in years to come and wonder how we got through it. But I think people have a lot of great natural resources that they can tap into without even realising they're tapping into, that will help them get through situations like this. It's been difficult. It's been challenging. I'm a father of 3 children. Well, one is an adult now. I co-parent. So it's just trying to keep everything as normal as possible for them in these abnormal times. On a personal thing, one of the most challenging things I've had is my mother and father no longer live in Dublin. So they moved a few years ago. So for example, I haven't seen them now. I think it's nearly come to 12 weeks since the last time I've seen them. It's quite difficult. They're not the most, bit like myself, they're not the most techie, so they wouldn't be on Skype and they wouldn't be on Zoom. So it's just relying on phone calls and hoping everything is okay and keeping in touch that way. So I'm looking forward to the restrictions being lifted, so I can actually spend some time with my parents as well, and so my kids can spend some time with their grandparents because they're really missing them as well. Work-wise, it's been I've been inundated with people that have had concerns in relation to COVID, in relation to their employment rights, in relation to housing, and everything that has come up during COVID. What COVID has kind of shown to me is that there has been a lot of there's also always been a lot of frailties in policies over the years, whether that's housing, whether that's health, whether that's transport, whether that's business, whatever it might be. But what COVID has done is brought all these frailties to the surface, and they're not just cracks now, they're real big chasms, and you can see the impact on the health system that we haven't got the capacity to deal with, never mind with COVID, but everything else that's going on, whether that's children waiting for scoliosis, whether that's cancer treatment, whatever it might be. We've seen the housing crisis. You know yourself, Robert, what it's like. You've worked on it yourself before. We've over 10,000 people in Dublin on the housing waiting list. I think nearly up to 800 families that are in homeless accommodation just in Dublin alone. So it's absolutely frightening. And this is pre-COVID, so you put COVID on top of this and the pandemic on top of it, and it's shown all the frailties that the government policies over the years have led to the situation that we're in now. So it's been quite a challenging time for everybody.
Yeah, no, and I think I think definitely with COVID, like we've seen this, all of these cracks are really coming to the surface now. A lot of the stuff, can go unnoticed for so long, but it's so difficult. Like, I mean, a lot of my own clients that are coming into me, not able to see their parents, or we often forget people that are due to their own conditions or autoimmune conditions that they might have had to self-isolate themselves, and the challenges that can be for people not seeing family and being disconnected from people is really, really difficult. Mark, I just want to talk to you maybe just a little bit about being a TD, and you did kind of tap into that a while ago, but myself and Danielle would often talk about like what a difficult job it is, like, and we're watching prime time and maybe sometimes, people being attacked, and it's like, oh my God, like, why would you want to do that or put yourself in that position? But obviously, look, you're in a brilliant position. You're party spokesperson for mental health, and just from listening and talking to you and getting to know you personally in the past, you have a huge passion for that and supporting and helping people. Where does maybe your passion for being a TD or being in politics come from?
As I mentioned earlier on, Robert, like, I've always been from an area that has, it's an area of activism, is one for a better word, not necessarily an area of politicization, but more activism, and that influenced me, and I realized without actually realizing it that the better I done for myself, and the more that I was able to get into certain positions, I was able to influence change more. So, for example, I remember being, I was just working away in logistics services, and and situation changed where I decided at that stage that I wanted to do something different. So I went to college, and that college kind of opened up more doors for me, and it gave me more more of a say and more of a knowledge and more of an influence in my area. I was working in an addiction service, as you know yourself. I was with you at that stage, and I got the opportunity, and I always call myself an accidental politician. I got an opportunity then to be co-opted into South Dublin County Council as a councillor. I was a member of the party, all right, but it wasn't something that was on my agenda to do. But the party believed that I was the right person at the time to take over from Owen O'Brien, who's our spokesperson on housing. So I decided to do that. Now, it was to the detriment at the time to the career that I was in, because I was put with a choice of to either continue in the addiction service that I was in, or to go and pursue this councillor. And it was a big drop in wages. It wasn't something that was most people that have any sense probably would have said no, but myself, I just seen it as an opportunity to influence change, and I done that. And I realised very soon when I was in there that my voice and my accent and where I'm from was really, really important to be heard, because I felt that an awful lot of people from my backgrounds, their voices hadn't been heard in areas like that, especially in the council chamber and stuff. And within 2 years, I was then nominated to be the mayor of South Dublin, which was a huge thing. I was the first person from my area in Knockandalkin to become mayor of South Dublin.
Just incredible. Incredible. Sorry to cut across, but yeah, really incredible. I remember that happening, and I just thought, geez, it's just amazing, like.
Yeah, and it was a really, really short time, as in becoming a councillor in 2016, and then by 2018, I was elected as the mayor of South Dublin. So I was obviously doing something right, but it was more, again, that being the mayor of South Dublin kind of gave me a little bit more of a platform. And when I opened my mouth, more people listened, and so I could start influencing change on that as well. I contested the local elections in 2019, which was a difficult election for Sinn Féin, but it wasn't for myself. I topped the poll in my area. I got in on the first count, and I was elected. But while the local elections was going on, and this is the reason that I've kind of ended up here, and I still say I'm an accidental politician, is because the European elections were on at the same time. Francis Fitzgerald, who was the former Taoiseach and a stalwart of Fine Gael, contested the European elections and was successful, which meant that there was a vacancy in Dublin Midwest, which is the area that I was from. So the party decided that I was the candidate that they wanted to put forward in that election. Nobody really gave us a fighting chance. They seen it as a Fine Gael seat. It's always been a Fine Gael seat. But from the local elections to the by-election, our message started resonating with people. And when we had a great local elections, people started listening to us, what we were saying on a national level, that families and workers just basically needed a break. And that was the platform that we went out. And I won that election it was a week ago on Sunday, I think it was this week. I won that election, and it was a huge boost, never mind for myself personally and my family, but it was also a huge boost for our party, and it kind of led us on then to the general election in February, where we went from, I think it was 20 seats up to 37, I think it was, which was a huge increase for the party. I'm in a position to change
politics, actually.
Yeah, it was, yeah, and I think it's something that will never be reversed. I think, and I'm not just saying Sinn Féin, I think this flip-flop of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael government since the formation of the state, that's I think it's on its last legs now. Well, you might see them in government in the future in one form or another. I think people are starting to see real opposition for what it's worth, which is tangible, which is vocal, which is trying to influence change. And that's going back to your very start of your question. My passion for getting into this kind of line of work, if you want to call it that, and everything that goes with it, good, bad, and indifferent, is that I feel that I'm in a position where I can influence change that's going to benefit people that I represent and the area that I grew up in, and it's going to have a positive impact on not only my children's lives but other children's lives around my area as well. So that's where the passion comes from, Robert.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Mark, like, you know, I wouldn't even have been aware, and I'm sure most people aren't aware, that you live with multiple sclerosis. And I suppose maybe for people that don't know anything about it, I'm just wondering, would you mind sharing a little bit about what MS is and how it can affect someone, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And you know what, I worked with you and you wouldn't have been aware, because it was something that I didn't felt the need to tell people, because I had and I still have it under a modicum of control, I'd say, for want of a better word, but I live with it. Actually, I don't live with it. I always say multiple sclerosis lives with me, and God love it. Like, that's the way I deal with it. I was diagnosed about 14 years ago, after years of being misdiagnosed and undiagnosed and brought into the hospital for something that they couldn't figure out where I was. And I eventually got a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. At the time, it was very, very frightening. But me being a man of my generation, that I thought that I could bottle everything up and not speak about it and tell everybody else was fine. And that's what I done. So I used to tell people everything was fine. But on the inside, I was terrified. I was frightened. But I hadn't got the ability to articulate what actually was going on for me. I didn't have the capacity in me at the time to be able to go and say, listen, I'm frightened. I'm really, really worried about this. I'm really, really worried how I'm going to provide for my family and all that kind of stuff at the time. And that led me at that stage to be very sick within myself. As in, I was suffering with depression. I didn't know I was suffering with depression. I didn't even know what depression was. But I found myself becoming very withdrawn from family, from friends, from society in general, and becoming a recluse. And that went on for a number of years, until I finally just decided just to do something that I always advise anybody else to do. I opened my mouth and I spoke about actually how I was feeling. Whether I had the capacity and the language to articulate that at the time, it didn't really matter, because once I opened my mouth, I took a chance and spoke to somebody, and that led me on to speaking to somebody else, and I end up getting help for myself at the time. And that allowed me then to start not only dealing with what was going on internally, but also what was going on with multiple sclerosis at the time. So at this stage, I obviously I took a while to accept that I have it, but I accept that I have the condition. It's a lifelong neurological condition. It's basically like, it's the simple way of putting it is that if you take my brain as a motherboard and my body as a kind of circuit board, when the messages are going from my brain, say, to my hands or to my fingers, it takes a little detour. There's a circuit break somewhere, and it takes a little detour, and it takes a little bit longer to get to certain parts of my body, which means the body is actually working extra to get the signal down there, which is having it an impact on pain, or maybe it's causing fatigue, or sometimes it's irritation as well. So that's the kind of layman's term of what multiple sclerosis is. There's all sorts of treatment for it, and everybody takes their own path in it. It's not a one-size-fit-all condition. So everybody, you could have a Robert and have a totally different reaction than
side effects to it, like,
yeah. Or what I'd have, I was on medication for a while, and I found the medication was actually, just for me, was having an impact on my quality of life. So at the moment, and it's sometimes I do have a disagreement with my neurologist over it. I'm not on any medication for it. I kind of look after myself, not as well as I should at the moment, because I'm quite busy, but I eat well and I exercise well and all that kind of stuff. I only went public, Robert, and this is going back to the influence of being in a position of influence. I only went public when I was the mayor of South Dublin. I decided to go public on a couple of things in relation to it, and it was more to give people who are newly diagnosed a bit of hope, because when I was newly diagnosed, even though I was telling people I was fine, I didn't think I had any hope. And in that year, I ran the Dublin City Marathon, which was a huge achievement. At one stage, say 12 years ago, I was on a walking stick. I needed a walking stick to get around. I couldn't go into a shop that had a refrigerated supermarket with the refrigerated section, because the cold would get into me very, very quick, and I'd find myself in bed for a couple of days. So that's where I was, going around walking stick and afraid to go into certain places. And then 10 years or so later, I was running the Dublin City Marathon, which was an absolutely fantastic achievement.
It's just incredible.
But what I did do was raise awareness for people, especially newly diagnosed people, that just wherever you're feeling, just go out and speak about it. And there is help out there. You just have to tap into it. So that's the reason why I went public on it.
No, it's brilliant, and you know, I always admired you for that. Looking back, you know, I wouldn't have been aware. Like, you know, I worked closely with you for a number of years, when I was in Dublin working in the community project. But you know, that tells a lot about you as well yourself. You know, you never publicized that, you know, and when you did, it was very, very positive reasons. Mark, I suppose, look, for you tapped into, like, you know, that obviously depression was part of MS, and you know that was part of you for a number of years that you struggled with that. Is anxiety something as well that possibly you've struggled with in relation to it? And you know, just in relation to both of them, or even one of them, anxiety or depression, like, how have you got support for them? How have you managed that? You know, what skills and tools maybe have you developed and use maybe today to kind of support you with that stuff? Like,
okay, but the most basic thing I have is I have a good support network of friends and family around me. So if I need to speak to somebody, I have people I can go and speak to, and I'm not afraid to go and pick up the phone and go and speak to somebody personally if I need to. The depression at the time, that's gone back a good few years. It's not something I've suffered with since, and I'm lucky with that. To me, it was the being diagnosed with something that I didn't know anything about, and I done Dr. Google. So when I done Dr. Google, my train of thought would only let me look at the negative sides of MS. It wouldn't let me see the people that would have recovered and the people that would have lived a positive and good quality of life. My head wasn't in a fit state to do that. So I was looking at the negative kind of stuff, and my head was only going to let me look at that. As I said, I was suffering with depression. I became withdrawn. I wouldn't speak to family, friends, work colleagues, anybody. But if anybody was asking me how I was telling them I was fine, and which I wasn't at all. I went and spoke to people, and I just learned different tools and how to deal with that. And it was just more about changing my thinking around MS. And I mentioned earlier on, I don't say I have MS anymore. I say MS has me, and God love it. That's the way I kind of look at it. I wouldn't like to be MS. I wouldn't like to be MS that wanted to take over somebody's body and end up with me. Yeah, wouldn't end up with me, like, because I'm not someone that now that is allowing it to impact on me on a daily basis. It doesn't impact me on a daily basis. I actually, most days I don't even think about it, which goes to show from somebody that was obsessing with something at one stage to somebody that doesn't think about it. Now, I might get the odd twinge, I might be tired a little bit more, or sometimes I get a pain, which wouldn't be normal, people wouldn't get, and that kind of brings it back. But I can deal with that now, and it's something that I deal with on a daily basis. And anxiety, they go hand in hand. It wasn't, and I don't know what, everybody feels anxious. I still get it, like even doing public speaking, I get this kind of ball of nerves in my stomach sometimes before I have to go up and speak, and it's kind of just changing my thinking around that and pushing myself through it. Like, a lot of that is not even to do with MS. A lot of that is being conditioned in an area of a social disadvantage area where you're constantly told by outsiders that you're not good enough, that your voice shouldn't be heard, and it's to push through that. It's just, for me myself, is to say, listen, I deserve my voice to be heard as much as anybody else, and what I have to say is every bit as important as anybody else. Whether you agree with me or not, it's irrelevant. But what I have to say, to me, is very important for me to say, and it's just to push myself through that, Robert.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. It's that it was one of my questions for you, actually, just around public speaking and the anxiety that can often come with that. And you know, people's internal dialogue can often be quite negative, and that can really kind of make them avoid all of those type of situations. So it just maybe just something on that, like what you tell yourself, like, you know, when that ball of anxiety is there and maybe you're faced with maybe going into the Dáil or doing a public speak. I mean, how do you kind of push yourself through that fear zone? You know, how do you manage that?
One of the best bit of advice I've got, when I was going up for my very first meeting up South Dublin County Council, I went up with Owen O'Brien, who was at TD, and two of us went up in the car. And he was explaining to me what was going to happen that day. Now, I should have asked before that what was actually going to happen that day. So he was saying, I got in and I thanked the council for my time in the council, and I think a cousin speech and says, then I introduce you and I say a few words about you, and then you go in and say, you go in and do your speech. And I had to stop, and I said, what speech? Because I wasn't prepared. I'd not prepared. I wasn't ready for anything. Yeah. And the anxiety just kicked in straight away. And he just basically just said to me, he said, listen, Mark, he says, just open your mouth. He says, what you have to say is very, very relevant. You're here for a reason. You're here because we as a party believe you're the best person in your area to take over from me in the council. And go and open your mouth. He says, and trust yourself. Whatever is going to come out is going to be the truth, and it's going to be your truth. So that's where I come from all the time. So when I'm speaking, even today, I was speaking on, just before this interview, I was speaking on the conditions of student nurses and midwives. So the way I kind of do things, I would have contacted a number of student nurses and midwives in my own area, and what I done was I brought their voices into the chamber today. So you'll probably see it later on. So I spoke on behalf of them, but I used their voices, because what's happened is when we're in here in the Dáil or in the chamber and discussing, and I'm not saying everybody, but some people are, and some parties and individuals in some parties, so I wouldn't say all parties, that connection between in here and what's actually happening in the real world sometimes gets broken. It sometimes gets broken. So what I always try to do is that I will give a voice to people that from the area that I represent, or whatever campaign that I'm speaking on. And to me, then it takes away that anxiety, because what I'm doing is I'm giving something back. I'm not just me up there for talking for the sake of talking. I'm actually giving something back to the area that I represent. So that helps as well. Yeah.
Brings great value into your life as well within what you're doing. Like it's fantastic. Mark, I suppose, look, just for people out there that might have MS or possibly struggling with other conditions or other autoimmune diseases, or people are just struggling with maybe their mental health, like, you know, and more simpler things, like what's some advice that you might give people?
Okay, the first thing I would do on the autoimmune disease rather than the mental health would be not to do Dr. Google. I said it already, because Dr. Google will never, if your state of mind is not in a good place, Dr. Google will bring you down the dark road, and it will only allow you to focus on the worst possible outcomes. That's just the reality of it. So don't do Dr. Google. Go and speak to the societies or the organizations that are set up to help wherever it might be. So if it's MS, there's the MS Society, who I found really, really good over the years and very, very helpful. There is, if it's Parkinson, or if it's motor neuron disease, wherever it might be, just using them as an example, there is organisations set up to advocate on your behalf and speak to you. And then if you need counselling after speaking to these people will put you in touch with the right counsellors. And a lot of time there is no monetary, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. So if money is an obstacle, get in touch with them. It doesn't cost you anything. In relation to people that are struggling with mental health, the cliche that's always put out there, like it's okay not to be okay, but it's not a cliche. It is okay not to be okay. There's days I'm not okay. There's days you're not okay. Everybody has days when they're not okay. So what I would suggest, and it's back to basics, is that if you have got support networks around you, such as family, friends, work colleagues, is to rely on them, because you be the very person that would want your work colleague, your friend, your family member to rely on you if they were feeling down. And it's something that people actually appreciate when you go and speak to them. Unfortunately, not everybody has that network of family, friends, or work colleagues around them. So what I would suggest is that your first point of call, if you're suffering with or anything with mental health, is your GP. Is your GP, and then take it from there then, and do one step at a time, and try not look at the bigger picture, but try and just take things a day at a time. And that kind of brings things into the here and now, which are a lot easier to manage than what's going to come down 5 years down the line, because your head will go off into all sorts of movie films and stories which never have any good endings.
That's brilliant advice. Yeah, really good. And I think even tapping into what you've said earlier, and you kind of went into there, is, you know, it's the fear of the unknown is often the worst. It's kind of, you know, that knowledge, and when you get an understanding of what's going on for you or what's taking place, that kind of gives you the power to kind of know what you need to do and what you need to implement to kind of move forward and kind of support yourself. And like talking fundamentally, obviously, is so important. Great advice, Mark. Okay, Mark, just in relation to family, I know you're a real family man. I mean, where would you see kind of family fundamentally in relation to our well-being? And I suppose one of my reasons for setting up the channel was that it would kind of come under that umbrella of health and well-being, and just looking at kind of all the different areas that kind of takes into account, and family definitely being one of them. So for you, family, like, where does that come into kind of you having a positive sense of well-being?
family is my core. Like that's the core of who I am and where I come from. Like so, my family is usually huge important to me. Whether that's being a brother, whether that's being a son, whether that's being a father, wherever it might be, and whatever role that I am in the family, it's usually important to me. Like I co-parent my children. My eldest daughter's 20. She's in UCD now. She's in her second year of college. My two youngest kids are 14 and 12, and I spend as much time as possible with them. Even at the weekends when they're with me or during the week, whatever day they're with me, I turn off my phone from work as best as I can. That's something really important that I have to do, just so I have that time with them and they have that time with me, and there's not a distraction. Now, most times it's trying to get my kids off their Xboxes and their PlayStations and to come and spend time with me. But I'm very involved with the local GAA, and I train the local GAA teams as well, which is really good for me and for my mental health. It gets me out and about and feeling involved. So I think family are they're a huge influence on me, but I can also be, and like every member of the family, be a big influence on them. So one of the proudest moments I had was when I got elected into the Dáil, and my mum and dad came in with me. It was really emotional to see how proud that they were that they had that son was after being elected as a Teach the Dáil in the by-election. They were really so proud of having for me. Like, you know what I mean? And I could see, and then I had to kind of, when I was out with my dad a few times and be meeting friends and whatever, and he wasn't introducing me as his son anymore. He's introduced me as this is my son. This is my son, Mark, the PD. He said, listen, just get back to Mark. Like, you know what I mean? But it just showed how proud that he was.
Yeah, lovely, really nice.
And he's proud of us all, and he always says that, like, I've other brothers and sisters, and he's equally proud of every single one of us in different ways, the same way I am about my children as well. Like, it's fantastic to have.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a lovely story about your father as well. It's really nice. And I suppose for us having those positive connections in our life is really important. I mean, we can get really caught up in work sometimes as well, and kind of putting that aside and like you said, turning off the phone and putting it away, and kind of making sure that when we're with our family and with our children, that we're really connecting. Mark, just you kind of touched in it there again, but just in relation to kind of having positive health and well-being, like you talked about, you're a big GAA man. I might come to that in a sec, but one of our biggest rivals here in Kerry, but not going well for us this year. But anyway, just in relation to health and well-being, like, you know, what are other things you do? Obviously, look, nutrition is really important. Exercise. I mean, what are the kind of things that you do to kind of maintain a good self health and well-being for you in your own life?
And excuse the language on this one, but I had to give myself the proverbial kick in the arse this week, Robert, because I haven't been getting the exercise in that I should be getting in. Like, when you get to a stage and you do something, so exercise works for me, whether that's going out for a jog, whether it's going out for a cycle, whether even if it's going out for a walk, I'm going to the gym. It really works for me. And sometimes what happens when we do something that really works for us, we just stop doing it. And that's what's kind of happened to me over the last while. It's because I'm so busy in work or with family as well, that I haven't allotted myself that time. So it's just about me getting back into a little bit of a routine where I for me is to fit that exercise and cycling and running and wherever it might be back into my life. Like, I even got myself a weight bench at home that is just gathering dust. Like, it's there in my house. It's not that I haven't got the access to it because the gyms are closed because of the restrictions. I actually went out and bought something which I haven't really used, and that's something that I will have to go and do for myself. But I really find exercise really good. And to me, everybody has their own way of doing things. I love nothing better than going out for a jog on my own. Sometimes I put music on, sometimes I don't. But I just like to switch off for that 40 minutes of a run, whatever you're doing. It's really kind of valuable for me. It's the same. I started cycle there recently as well, and I've signed up to do a Dublin to Belfast cycle in the new year. Now, I haven't cycled any more than 17k at the moment, so it's a huge jump, but it's given me something to aim for. So I felt that would be something. Once I set my mind to something, I usually kind of do my best to get there. So I've started cycling as well. I must say I'm really enjoying it. My biggest fear on cycle is that I get a puncture and I don't know how to fix a puncture. 45 years of age and I can't fix a puncture, but I'm sure I'll cross that bridge if I have to. But it's vital to exercise for your well-being. Nutrition is really, really good as well for me, and it's something that I had in check for a while, and it's something else I need to get back on track. And particularly when I'm walking the way I'm walking and I'm eating on the run, it's just to get myself back into routine of eating the proper foods at the right time as well.
Yeah, it could be a lot more challenging. I suppose that's life for so many of us. It's that we can be really effective for periods of time. We can kind of fall off, but it is just about trying to bring ourselves back on track again. But really good advice. I do a bit of running myself. Really enjoy it. Mark, I suppose, look, I'm gonna have to ask you. Don't really want to ask you, but just around Dublin, I suppose, how do you think they're going to fare in this year's championship? Those that wouldn't know Mark is probably one of the biggest Dublin supporters, possibly very, very well known with the Dublin team as well, and a very popular man up in Hill 16. But Mark, what do you think? How do you think you're going to fare this year?
You know what? It's probably one of the most interesting championships that I've never been at.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because I don't miss games. I go to the Oborne Cup games, league games up and down the country. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and it's something that's really good for me as well. And I love just getting out and just being with the lads and bringing my family along to the matches and enjoying the atmosphere that goes with it. It's absolutely fantastic. We're having a great run under Jim Gavin, which is another Clondalkin native that doesn't live that far away from myself, which is fun. Same club as well in Round Towers and Clondalkin. We had a great run with Jim Gavin. We have a new manager now with Desi Farrell, who's where people thought we'd be in transition, but after a kind of indifferent kind of league campaign, we've hit the ground running in the championship, and I thought the last match against Meath was really impressive that we didn't take our foot off the gas, even though we were so far ahead. We're in an All-Ireland semi-final now, which I always like to see the best teams there. So I'm kind of disappointed to see Kerry not there, because they have been between themselves and Mayo have been the two teams that have been consistently challenged Dublin over the years. I think it's really it's the way time throws up these permeabilities over the years. We have an All-Ireland semi-final, which is the exact same All-Ireland semi-final as the 1920 semi-final around Bloody Sunday, where you have Dublin and Cavan in one final, and you have Tipperary and Mayo in the other final. And what happened then was it ended up being a Tipperary and Dublin final, with Tipperary winning. So I wouldn't mind to see a Tipperary and Dublin final again, but this time I'd like to see the outcome change a little bit, that Dublin come out on top of that and we get our 6 in a row.
Yeah. It's actually, it's terrible we're out of it. But even watching it now, it's so exciting. It's like all these underdogs are coming through, and it's an amazing championship. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Mark, come here, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and you taking the time, and I think people take so much from listening to you. I really do. Do you want to just finish with just a few words, maybe, just on mental health, and maybe, it doesn't matter what it is, just whatever you want to maybe leave people with.
I will. Do you know what? I'll speak, and you mentioned mental health. It's about policy decisions again, and I don't want to get all political at the end, but there's not a debate in this chamber, in the Dáil, that doesn't impact on people's mental health. Whether that's a policy change in health, in housing, in transport, in business, it has a direct impact on people's mental health. I've been advocating for a while that the spokesperson or the minister for mental health has a seat at the cabinet table in the government, because what her party colleagues are deciding at cabinet level is actually having a direct influence and impact on her brief as the mental health spokesperson. So we need to have that voice in there, because everything that happens within policy has an impact on people's mental health. The housing crisis, the health crisis, wherever it might be, has an impact on it. On a positive side, I just really do think that the resilience that people have has been absolutely tested to the full during this pandemic, but we're surviving. As a country and as a race, we've actually really come through this really well. We'll see the negative kind of stuff out on social media around a couple of people gathering together here and there and breaking social media kind of stuff. Right, that happens, but the vast majority of people have been really, really good. They're looking after themselves, they're looking after their friends, they're looking after their neighbours. And it just shows how we are as a country. And I think that's a positive thing that we need to take out of that we have got the resilience and we are able to help ourselves and help each other. And that's the last thing I'll finish on. The most important person that you should be helping out is yourself. And I've said this from day one, and that's not being selfish, because if you can't look after yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. Then, like the old saying is, when the air hostess or the air host steward is on the airplane, you know what I'm saying, Robert? When he gets on and they say about the oxygen mask, they say look after yourself first. And the simple reason is you look after yourself first, and then you're in a better position to help other people. So that be a message that I give anybody. Just look after yourself first, and then be able to look after other people.
That's a fabulous to finish with that, Mark. Yeah, really, really good. And people, I think what else I'd like people to take from today's video is that no matter what you're faced with in life, no matter what, and like everybody will be faced with different adversity at different times, that, you can find a way through it. There is support there for you. And, you have every individual has more untapped potential than they ever truly know. So don't leave things get in your way of you achieving your goals. Mark, thanks again so much. Real pleasure to talk to you. For anybody that's watching the video, if you can, it'd be great if you like what you see, like and share the video, and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.
Good man.